Hi there. Welcome to Dreamy Histories channel. Tonight we're dropping you straight into the nightmare of being a female spy in Nazi-occupied France. Picture this. You're dangling from a parachute in the pitch-black night, the wind tearing at your face, and you've just realized the pilot dropped you 20 miles from where you're supposed to be, below you. German searchlights sweep across the countryside like hungry fingers, and you're about to discover why most people wouldn't last 24 hours doing what the women of Britain's Special Operations Executive did every single day. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight. Drop your location and local time in the comments below. Now, close your eyes and listen. You're falling through the French night sky in September 1943, and everything's already gone wrong. The RAF pilot was supposed to drop you near a safe house outside Lyon, but anti-aircraft fire forced him off course. Now you're descending toward what looks like a farm field, praying those aren't German soldiers you see moving near the tree line. Your silk parachute, which you're supposed to bury immediately upon landing, is going to be visible for miles if you can't get it hidden before dawn. The ground rushes up faster than expected. You hit hard, rolling through wet grass that soaks through your French civilian clothes. Remember, you're not wearing a uniform. If caught, you won't be treated as a prisoner of war. You're a spy, and spies get shot. Or worse, much worse, especially if you're a woman. Your ankle screams in protest as you struggle to gather the parachute. Every second counts. The nearest village could be crawling with Wehrmacht troops or, even more dangerous, the Gestapo. You stuff the silk into your pack, knowing that French housewives would kill for this material in wartime. Parachute silk makes excellent underwear, apparently, but you can't risk anyone finding it. The SOE trained you for this moment back in Scotland, but they couldn't prepare you for the bone-deep terror of being completely alone in enemy territory. Your radio operator was supposed to land with you, but you saw his parachute drifting miles to the east. If he's been captured, the Germans already know you're here. You pull out your compass, hidden inside what looks like a powder compact, and try to orient yourself. The safe house contact is expecting Marie Dubois, a seamstress from Marseille. That's you now. You've spent months perfecting her backstory, down to the name of the shop where she supposedly learned her trade. But first, you need to survive until dawn. A dog barks in the distance, then another. Your instructors warned you about this. German patrols often use dogs to track downed Allied airmen. But you're not an airman. You're something far more dangerous and far more vulnerable. A woman pretending to be someone she's not, carrying enough explosives in your suitcase to blow up a railway bridge, and secrets in your head that could destroy an entire resistance network. You start walking, favoring your twisted ankle, knowing that by sunrise you need to look like any other French woman heading to market. The hedgerows provide cover, but they also hide potential enemies. Every shadow could be a German sentry. Every sound might be your last. Historians still argue whether the SOE's decision to use female agents was brilliant strategy or desperate recklessness. What's certain is that 39 women went into France for the SOE, and 13 never came home. Those aren't great odds, especially when you consider that getting caught meant facing interrogation methods that would make medieval torturers squeamish. You're 3 miles from the nearest road when you hear the trucks. German convoy, moving fast. You drop flat in a ditch, tasting mud and fear. The vehicles rumble past, close enough that you can smell the diesel fumes. When silence returns, you realize you've been holding your breath for so long your lungs burn. This is hour 1 of your mission. You haven't even made contact with the resistance yet. You haven't transmitted a single message back to London. You're just trying to stay alive long enough to become Marie Dubois, seamstress and secret agent, in a world where one wrong word means death. The mud in that ditch reminds you of Scotland, 6 months earlier, when you thought you were tough enough for this job. Spoiler alert, you weren't. Nobody was. The Special Operations Executives Training Program was specifically designed to break you, and it started the moment you arrived at what looked like a pleasant country house, but was actually a psychological torture chamber with doilies. You'd responded to a vague government advertisement seeking women with language skills for special employment. They didn't mention the special employment involved learning 17 ways to kill a man with a hairpin. The interview process alone should have warned you. While other women were joining the Women's Auxiliary Air Force to type reports, you sat across from a stern woman who asked questions like, "Could you shoot a man in cold blood?" and "How do you feel about being tortured?" The first phase at Wombrah Manor seemed deceptively civilized. You learned map reading, basic codes, and how to handle weapons. The instructors were polite British officers who called you Miss while teaching you to slit throats. But they were watching everything. How you held your fork at dinner, whether you could stay silent under pressure, if you flinched when they fired live ammunition over your head during morning calisthenics. About half your class washed out in the first 2 weeks. Some couldn't handle the physical training. You remember Patricia, who'd been a librarian before the war, sobbing in the bathroom after failing the obstacle course for the 3rd time. She was on a train back to London by tea time, probably relieved to return to a world where the biggest danger was paper cuts. But you survived to reach the Scottish Highlands, where things got properly insane. The commandos at Arisaic House didn't care that you were women. They treated you exactly like the male agents, which meant dawn raids on your barracks, 30-mile hikes through freezing rain, and hand-to-hand combat training that left you covered in bruises. You learned silent killing. A cheerful Scottish sergeant taught you the exact angle needed to slide a knife between ribs to reach the heart. Like cutting butter, he said, demonstrating on a straw dummy that you couldn't help noticing was wearing a German uniform. The explosives training was where you discovered your talent. Turns out, you had steady hands and a mind for chemistry. While the men in your group tended to use too much plastic explosive, boys and their toys, you learned that a tiny amount, properly placed, could derail an entire train. The instructor, a former mining engineer with missing fingers, occupational hazard, praised your delicate touch. "The Nazis won't expect a wee girl to blow up their supply lines," he grinned. You also endured survival training that would make reality TV contestants weep. Dropped in the Scottish wilderness with nothing but a knife and a compass. You had to find your way back to base while being hunted by instructors playing German soldiers. You ate things that definitely weren't meant for human consumption. Ever tried roasted pine bark? It tastes exactly like despair with a hint of resin. The psychological warfare phase happened at Beaulieu, a mansion in Hampshire where they broke down everything you thought you knew about yourself. The interrogation resistance training was particularly brutal. They'd wake you at 3 a.m., drag you to a cold cellar, and scream questions in German while shining lights in your face. The rule was simple: reveal nothing for 48 hours. After that, you could give them outdated information, because by then your network would have scattered. One woman, codenamed Iris, broke after 6 hours and gave up her entire fabricated network. She was gone the next morning. You lasted the full 48 hours by focusing on your cover story so intensely that you almost believed you really were Marie Dubois. When they finally stopped, the interrogator, a Polish officer who'd escaped the Gestapo himself, told you that you'd probably survive about half that time under real torture. But, he added helpfully, that might be enough. Historians still debate whether the SOE's training was unnecessarily harsh or brilliantly effective. What's certain is that it transformed middle-class British women into weapons. You learned to pick locks with hairpins, hide messages in cigarette papers, and recognize the sound of different German military vehicles by their engines. You could encode a message in less than 2 minutes and shoot accurately in total darkness. The final test was the most disturbing. They sent you to conduct a mock mission in Brighton, complete with fake identity papers. Your job was to blend in, make contact with an agent, actually an instructor, and maintain your cover story under surprise questioning. You were stopped by local police who'd been briefed to be suspicious. When you perfectly recited Marie Dubois' life story, including the names of her imaginary deceased parents, you realized the training had worked. You weren't pretending anymore. Your French accent is going to get you killed. And you know it, not today, stumbling through this muddy field, but soon. Maybe tomorrow when you try to buy bread. Maybe next week when a German officer asks for your papers. The SOE language instructors back in England swore you could pass for a native from Marseille. But they'd clearly never met an actual Gestapo officer who'd spent 3 years listening for exactly the way you just pronounced boulangerie. You grew up speaking schoolgirl French, all proper grammar and Parisian pronunciation that would mark you as foreign the moment you opened your mouth in southern France. The SOE tried to fix this. Lord, how they tried. You spent 4 months with Marie-Claire, a chain-smoking woman from Marseille who physically winced every time you spoke. She'd grab your jaw, repositioning it like you were a ventriloquist dummy, making you repeat phrases until your throat was raw. Non, 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 she'd shriek. You sound like the Queen of England choking on a croissant. In Marseille, we don't speak from here, she'd tap her throat. We speak from here. She'd punch her stomach. Cigarette ash flying everywhere. You try again, mangling the distinctive southern drawl that turned pain into something that sounded like peng and made Parisians cringe. The regional accents were just the beginning of your linguistic nightmare. You had to learn the slang, the expressions that changed every few months, the way young women spoke versus older ones. You memorized conversations about rationing, memorized complaints about the Germans that were safe to voice, memorized the exact way a seamstress from Marseille would discuss fabric shortages. But memorizing and living it were different beasts entirely. Even native French speakers in the SOE struggled. You trained with André Borel, who'd grown up in Paris but had been in England for 2 years. 2 years was long enough for her French to sound slightly off, like a piano that needed tuning. She'd picked up English intonations, started structuring sentences with British logic. The instructors made her practice with recordings of Radio Paris, the German-controlled station, to recapture the rhythm of occupied French. The technical vocabulary was another minefield. As Marie Dubois, the seamstress, you needed to know every term for different stitches, fabrics, and techniques, but not the formal terms from textbooks, the actual words working-class seamstresses used. You spent weeks in a London workshop with French refugees, learning that nobody said boutonnière anymore. It was bride in the South. Get it wrong, and you might as well wear a Union Jack on your forehead. Then there were the German phrases every French person had learned to survive. Ausweis for identity papers, Kommandantur for German headquarters, Sperrstunde for curfew. You had to know these words but pronounce them with the exact degree of French contempt. Too perfect, and you sounded like a collaborator. Too butchered, and you sounded foreign. The SOE brought in drama coaches who made you practice emotional states in French. Could you sound naturally terrified while maintaining your accent? Could you cry convincingly without slipping into English speech patterns? You'd stand in front of mirrors, watching your mouth movements, because even your facial expressions needed to be French. British women smiled differently, held their mouths differently at rest. Historians still argue whether the language training was adequate. Some claim the SOE rushed agents into the field with dangerously imperfect French. Others point out that many French people spoke oddly during the war, refugees from other regions, people traumatized into strange speech patterns, civilians who'd picked up German phrases. Your imperfect accent might actually help you blend into this linguistic chaos. You're thinking about all this as dawn breaks over the French countryside. You found a barn to hide in, and you're practicing your cover story aloud, whispering to the cows who seem unimpressed by your Marseille accent. Je suis Marie Dubois. Je suis couturière. The words feel like marbles in your mouth. In 3 hours, you'll need to walk into the village and find the local cafe where your resistance contact supposedly works. You'll need to order coffee. No, ersatz coffee, because real coffee hasn't been seen in 2 years. And casually mention that you're looking for work as a seamstress. If your contact is still alive and free, he'll recognize the code phrase. If not, you'll be a stranger with a suspicious accent asking questions in a village full of informants. You practice one more time with the cows. Bonjour, je cherche du travail comme couturière. One of the cows moos, which you choose to interpret as encouragement. You'll need it, because in a few hours, your life will depend on whether you can convince a cafe full of locals that you're really Marie Dubois from Marseille, and not the British spy with the terrible accent that you actually are. The lipstick in your compact is called Rouge Baiser, and it's the wrong shade for 1943. You realize this as you apply it in the cracked mirror of the cafe washroom, your hands shaking slightly from exhaustion. In London, they'd assured you this was perfect, a French brand, correct for your social class. But the woman who just passed you in the narrow hallway wore a much darker shade, almost brown. The wartime lipstick made from beetroot and whatever else French women could scavenge. Your pre-war red screams, black market, or worse, German girlfriend. You wipe it off frantically, biting your lips instead to bring color. These details will kill you faster than any weapon. The SOE's finishing school at Beaulieu had an entire week dedicated to clothing and appearance, run by a terrifying woman named Vera Atkins, who could spot a British sewn seam from across a room. She'd made you strip everything, clothes, underwear, jewelry, and rebuild yourself as a French woman, inside out. The underwear situation alone was a masterclass in potential death traps. British knickers were cut differently, made from different fabric. The elastic was positioned wrong. French women in 1943 were wearing patched and repatched lingerie from before the war, or improvised undergarments made from parachute silk. Ironic, considering what you'd buried last night. Your SOE-issued underwear was artificially aged, the elastic carefully weakened. Patches added with French-style stitching. Still, you worry. Your coat. Oh God, your coat. You're buttoning it as you leave the washroom. And you catch yourself doing it the British way. Right over left. French women button left over right. Such a tiny detail. But the Gestapo trains its officers to watch for exactly these unconscious habits. You fix it quickly. But who might have noticed? The old man reading his ersatz newspaper. The woman behind the counter who's been eyeing you since you walked in. Even your walk is wrong. British women stride purposefully, shoulders back, the product of a lifetime of deportment lessons. French women, especially working-class French women, move differently, smaller steps, less rigid posture. A fluidity you've practiced for months but still feels like performing. Your instructors made you watch films of French streets, studying how women carried their handbags in the crook of the arm, never over the shoulder. How they gestured when talking, from the wrist, not the whole arm. How they sat, knees together but angled, never crossed at the ankle like a proper English lady. The shoes are particularly treacherous. The SOE aged them carefully, wearing down the heels unevenly because French women couldn't afford to replace shoes during the occupation. They walked differently to compensate for worn heels, a specific gait that favored the inside of the foot. But your shoes were worn down by a machine in London, not by months of walking on cobblestones. The wear pattern is subtly wrong, and you know the Gestapo has manuals on exactly this kind of detail. Your hair presents another problem. Cut in a style popular in Marseille 2 years ago, because that's when Marie Dubois would have last afforded a proper haircut. It's held with pins that must be positioned exactly right. British women use fewer hairpins, positioned differently. The SOE hairdresser, a refugee from Lyon, spent 3 hours teaching you the proper technique. A British woman's hair looks controlled, she explained. A French woman's hair looks arranged. There's a difference. You order your ersatz coffee, proud that you remember to ask for Café National instead of just café. The proprietress brings it without comment, but you notice her glancing at your hands. What's wrong with them? Then you remember the nails. You'd cut them short and square, practical for radio work, but Marie the seamstress would have longer nails, carefully shaped despite the lack of proper nail files. She'd protect them because her livelihood depended on delicate handwork. The coffee tastes like burnt acorns and disappointment. You sip it slowly, waiting for your contact who should have been here 20 minutes ago. Each passing minute increases the chances that he's been arrested, that this cafe is being watched, that your terrible fashion choices have already marked you as suspicious. Historians still debate whether these seemingly trivial details really mattered. Surely, the Gestapo had bigger concerns than button direction. But the records show otherwise. Agent after agent was caught by tiny mistakes. A British-style knot in their shoelaces, the wrong brand of cigarette papers, a handbag with a British-made clasp. The German security services distributed photographed guides to their officers. How to spot an enemy agent through clothing details, complete with diagrams. A young German soldier enters the cafe, and your blood freezes. He scans the room, his eyes passing over you without stopping. Your camouflage holds, for now. But tonight, you'll need to re-examine every item you're wearing, every gesture you make, because tomorrow you might encounter an officer who spent 3 years in Paris before the war, who knows exactly what shade of lipstick French women wore in 1943, and who will notice that yours is just a little too red. The radio in your suitcase weighs 30 pounds, and it's going to get you killed. You can hear it humming faintly as you climb the narrow stairs to your rented room above a bakery, the vacuum tubes warming up even though it's supposed to be switched off. The landlady, who smells perpetually of yeast and suspicion, watches you struggle with the case. Heavy for a seamstress, she observes. You force a laugh. Fabric samples. The new wool blends are very dense. Inside your room, you wedge a chair against the door and unpack the Type 3 Mark II radio, your lifeline to London, and your death sentence if discovered. The B2 suitcase radio, as the SOE calls it, looks innocent enough when closed. Open it, and anyone can see the transmitter that means immediate execution. No trial, no prisoner exchange, just a bullet in the courtyard of Fresnes prison if you're lucky, or a one-way trip to Ravensbrück if you're not. You string the antenna wire around the room, careful to keep it away from the windows. The Gestapo's radio detection vans are hunting right now, circling the streets of every major French city with their specialized equipment. They can triangulate a transmission in minutes if you stay on air too long. The SOE's limit is 5 minutes, but even that feels like forever when you know those grey vans are prowling nearby. Your crystals are hidden inside what looks like a tube of French toothpaste. 2 different frequencies for different days of the week. Tuesday means 4.2 megahertz. You plug in the crystal, praying the impact from last night's landing didn't damage it. The radio crackles to life, and you tap out your call sign, GXP, in a basement in London. A fanny operator, first aid nursing yeomanry, which has nothing to do with nursing and everything to do with secret communications, is waiting for your signal. The code poem runs through your head. Every SOE agent has one, a seemingly innocent verse that provides the key for encrypting messages. Yours is a French nursery rhyme about a little boat, chosen because Marie Dubois might believably know it. You transpose your message: arrived safely, stop, cafe contact missing, stop, await instructions, into groups of 5 letters, using your poem as the cipher key. Your hand hovers over the telegraph key. Every agent develops a unique fist, a Morse code signature as distinctive as handwriting. The Germans know this. If they capture you and force you to transmit under duress, London will know immediately. Unless, of course, they've also captured your security checks, the subtle mistakes you're supposed to include to prove you're transmitting freely. You have 2. Always misspell the 15th word and include an extra S in your sign-off. Leave them out, and London knows you're compromised. You begin transmitting. Dit-da, dit-dit, da-dit-da. Each second on air increases the danger. Somewhere in this city, a German operator might be spinning his detection dial, noting the unauthorized signal. The vans might already be moving, their operators triangulating your position. You've heard the stories, agents caught mid-transmission, their fingers still on the key. The bakery owner downstairs starts his ovens. An electrical interference crackles through your transmission. You curse silently and adjust the frequency. In London, your fanny operator, maybe it's Peggy, who always works Tuesday nights, is probably cursing too, trying to clear up your signal through the static. These women work 8-hour shifts in windowless basements, hunched over receivers, developing curves in their spines and permanent headaches from straining to hear weak signals from occupied Europe. 3 minutes. You're transmitting the last group when you hear it. A vehicle stopping outside. Your finger freezes on the key. Through the thin curtain, you glimpse a delivery truck. Just bread supplies. You finish the message, hands shaking so badly you probably garbled the last word. QRU comes back from London. Nothing more to send? You tap back VA, end of transmission, and immediately start breaking down the radio. Antenna reeled in, crystals hidden, everything back in the suitcase in under 90 seconds. Your SOE record was 65 seconds, but that was without the terror of knowing detection vans could be blocks away. Historians still argue whether the B2 radios were brilliant or insane. They provided vital communication, but practically guaranteed capture if used regularly. The average life expectancy of a radio operator in occupied France was 6 weeks. 6 weeks. The Germans got better at detection every month, and they had a nasty habit of letting operators transmit for weeks while building a case, then arresting everyone in the network simultaneously. You hide the suitcase under loose floorboards, covering it with dust and old newspapers dated from before your arrival. Tomorrow you'll need to move it. Never transmit from the same location twice. You'll also need to find your missing contact, establish a network, and somehow stay alive long enough to send London actual intelligence instead of, everything's gone wrong but I'm not dead yet. The landlady knocks. Mademoiselle, I have some bread ends if you're hungry. You open the door, smile like Marie Dubois would smile, and accept the charity of stale bread. She glances past you into the room, and you pray she doesn't notice the indentations in the rug where the antenna wire was stretched. You look tired, she says. The occupation is hard on everyone. If only she knew. You're sitting in a Lyon park, feeding breadcrumbs to pigeons while pretending to read a 2-day-old newspaper. When you finally understand why the men in your SOE training class couldn't stop staring at Pearl Witherington. It wasn't her beauty, though she was stunning in that understated English way. It was the absolutely terrifying competence that radiated from her like heat from a forge. She could kill you with a knitting needle and make it look like an accident, all while maintaining perfect posture. Pearl had parachuted into France 6 months before you, and the stories were already legendary. Unlike you, stumbling around with your bad accent and wrong lipstick, Pearl ran her resistance network like a Swiss watch. 3,000 men under her command, all convinced they were following orders from a mysterious Major Pearl. The Germans put a 1 million franc bounty on her head. Her response? She sent them a message saying they'd undervalued her. The female SOE agents were a breed apart from anything the world had seen before. Take Violette Sabo, who you trained with briefly, Cockney accent thick enough to spread on toast, widow of a French legionnaire, crack shot who could outshoot any man on the range. She'd volunteered after her husband died at El Alamein, leaving her with a baby daughter and a burning need to kill Nazis. During training, she'd broken her ankle on the assault course, strapped it up herself, and completed the 20-mile hike because German bullets won't wait for me ankle to heal, will they? Or Nancy Wake, the White Mouse, who the Gestapo considered the most dangerous Allied agent in France before the war. She'd been a socialite, drinking champagne in Marseille. Now she was killing German sentries with her bare hands and leading guerrilla attacks on German convoys. The Germans had captured her husband and tortured him to death trying to find her. Nancy's response was to personally lead the raid that destroyed the Gestapo headquarters responsible. You're thinking about these women because your new contact, finally surfaced after 3 terrifying days, has just informed you that you'll be working with Diana Rowden, another SOE courier. She's particular, he says, which in resistance speak means utterly ruthless. Diana arrives at the park bench 5 minutes later, looking like someone's maiden aunt on a shopping trip. Tweed skirt, sensible shoes, hair in a bun that could deflect bullets. You're the new radio operator, she says, not a question. Her accent is flawless. She spent her childhood in France. Your tradecraft is sloppy. I've been watching you for 10 minutes. You've checked your watch 3 times and looked over your shoulder twice. Nervous behavior attracts attention. She's right, of course. The SOE women who survive are the ones who've mastered the art of being invisible in plain sight. Diana proceeds to give you a masterclass in courier work. Never take the direct route. Always have 3 alternate escape routes. Memorize faces, not names. Trust no one completely, not even other agents, especially not other agents. The Germans had been known to turn captured SOE officers and send them back to infiltrate networks. The men think we're naturally suited for this because we're used to being overlooked, Diana says, crumbling bread with mechanical precision. They're idiots. We're good at this because we've spent our entire lives navigating male stupidity. The Gestapo is just another room full of men who underestimate us. She assigns you to courier duty for the next week. Not glamorous. Picking up messages from dead drops, carrying them sewn into your coat lining, delivering them to safe houses. But this is how intelligence networks actually function. Through women on bicycles with explosive secrets hidden in their shopping baskets. The men blow up trains. The women make sure they blow up the right trains. Historians still debate why women were so effective as SOE agents. Some argue they could move more freely. German soldiers were less likely to stop and search women. Others point to their training in subterfuge from navigating peacetime society. What's certain is their survival rate was actually better than male agents, possibly because they took fewer unnecessary risks, or maybe because they were tougher than anyone gave them credit for. A week into your courier work, you meet André Borel, Denise, the one you trained with who worried about her accent. She's been in France for 2 years now, her French perfect again, her nerves steady as steel. Over watery vegetable soup in a safe house kitchen, she tells you about parachuting in wearing a dress because her handlers thought trousers would shock the French resistance. I told them the only thing that would shock the Marquis was a woman who couldn't handle a Sten gun. These women are rewriting the rules of warfare. No Geneva Convention protection. No uniform to guarantee prisoner of war status. No recognition that they even exist. The British government will barely acknowledge them after the war. But right now, in occupied France, they're the backbone of intelligence networks that are saving thousands of Allied lives. You think about them that night as you encode another message for London, fingers steady on the telegraph key. Somewhere, Pearl is organizing another supply drop. Violette is teaching French farmers how to sabotage German trucks. Nancy is probably killing someone with her bare hands. And you're still alive, still transmitting, still fighting. In this business, that makes you a success. The pigeons have finished your breadcrumbs. Diana has vanished into the crowd like smoke. Tomorrow, you'll collect 3 messages, dodge 2 German checkpoints, and try not to die. Just another day in the life of an SOE courier queen. Marie Dubois has been dead for 3 years, which makes impersonating her particularly challenging when her cousin recognizes you at the market. You're selecting turnips, because that's all there is in November 1943, when a woman grabs your arm. Marie, mon Dieu, we thought you died in the bombing. Your blood freezes colder than the winter wind cutting through the market square. The SOE built your cover identity from death certificates, choosing people with no close family who died in air raids or deportations. Clean breaks, no complications. Except death records in wartime France are chaos. And sometimes the dead aren't as dead as London believes, or their cousins aren't as distant as the files suggest. This woman's fingers dig into your arm like claws, tears streaming down her face, and you have exactly 3 seconds to decide whether Marie Dubois had a birthmark on her left shoulder. I'm sorry. You manage, gently pulling away. You're mistaken. I'm Marie Duchamp. But she's not buying it, following you through the market, voice rising. I know my own cousin. What happened to you? Why didn't you contact us? People are starting to stare. In 5 minutes, someone will fetch a gendarme to sort out this family drama. In 10 minutes, that gendarme might call his German supervisors. You slip into an alley, the woman still pursuing, and make a calculated choice. Please, you whisper urgently, I'm not who you think, but if you keep shouting, we'll both be arrested. Something in your tone, desperation mixed with authority, makes her pause. She studies your face, and you see The moment she understands, her cousin is dead. You're something else entirely. Living your cover means more than memorizing facts. It means becoming someone else so completely that even you forget who you really are. Back in London, you spent weeks with Marie Dubois's file, born May 15, 1999, in a Marseille apartment that no longer exists. Parents died of influenza in 1937. Apprenticed to Madame Vernet's dress shop on Rue de la République. You know Marie's favourite colour, blue. Her first love, Pierre, killed at Dunkirk. Her appendectomy scar, right side, age 12. But knowing facts and living them are different beasts. You've developed Marie's habits, the way she tilts her head when thinking, picked up from studying one blurry photograph. You've given her opinions about the war that feels safe to express. She misses real coffee, but understands sacrifice. She hates the Germans, but not enough to seem dangerous. She's bitter about Pierre, but not enough to seem vengeful. The problem is muscle memory. You reach for light switches that aren't there because Marie's apartment wouldn't have had electricity. You expect tea at 4 o'clock before remembering Marie drinks tisane at 6. Worst of the dreams, you wake up speaking English, scrambling to remember if your landlady heard. Your fellow agents handle the identity crisis differently. Roger became his cover so completely that he had to be reminded of his real name during a briefing. Another agent, Paulette, developed what the SOE psychologist called beneficial dissociation. She genuinely believed she was her cover identity during operations, switching back only for radio transmissions. Some agents cracked, unable to maintain the constant deception, speaking in British accents during interrogations or forgetting their cover stories under pressure. The training tried to prepare you for this. They'd wake you at 3 a.m., shining lights in your face, demanding to know your mother's maiden name. If you answered with your real mother's name instead of Marie's mother's, you failed. They made you write letters to Marie's imaginary friends, cook her favourite meals, even pray in the particular way she would have learned at her specific church. Historians still argue whether the psychological toll was worth it. Post-war SOE files reveal agents who couldn't readjust to their real identities, who spent years answering to their code names. Some married under their cover identities before remembering those people never legally existed. The lucky ones managed to integrate both selves. The unlucky ones lost themselves entirely. That night, you lie in your narrow bed above the bakery, staring at the ceiling and trying to remember your real name. It takes 30 seconds, 30 terrifying seconds where Marie Dubois is all you are. When your real name finally surfaces, it feels foreign, like trying on clothes that no longer fit. You whisper it once, just to prove you still can, then bury it again. Tomorrow you'll wake up as Marie Dubois, seamstress from Marseille. You'll complain about rationing in her voice, miss her dead fiancé with her grief, live her life with your body, because in this game of survival, the woman you used to be is a luxury you can't afford. She's locked in a box in your mind, waiting for a war to end that might kill Marie Dubois and her both. The cousin never reports you. Perhaps she understands. Perhaps she's just grateful to pretend, for one moment, that her Marie survived in occupied France. Everyone's pretending to be someone they're not. You're just better at it than most, or worse, depending on how you measure these things. The cafe is wrong. Everything about it screams trap, from the way the waiter's eyes don't match his smile to how the old men at the corner table haven't touched their drinks in 20 minutes. You're supposed to meet your new contact here. Password. The weather is better in Normandy, but your skin prickles with the same feeling you get before a thunderstorm. Except this storm wears jackboots. You order coffee, carefully sitting with your back to the wall and clear sightlines to both exits. Just as they taught you at Beaulieu, the chair placement matters. Facing the door marks you as paranoid. Too relaxed suggests innocence that's performed rather than natural. You choose a seat that lets you watch the street in the window's reflection while appearing to read yesterday's collaborationist newspaper. The coffee arrives, that tragic wartime substitute that tastes like burnt acorns mixed with regret. You add saccharin, stirring counterclockwise because that's what Marie Dubois would do. Always counterclockwise, a tiny detail you invented to make her real. The spoon clinks against ceramic in a rhythm that definitely doesn't match the Morse code for danger. Your contact is late, in the SOE handbook, of things that will kill you. Late contacts rank just below trusting anyone and just above incorrect underwear. 5 minutes late means caution. 10 minutes means abort. It's been 12. But leaving too quickly looks suspicious, so you're trapped in this performance, sipping undrinkable coffee while pretending to care about German productivity statistics. The waiter refills your cup without being asked. Strange, given the rationing. His sleeve rides up, revealing a watch too expensive for cafe work. Military issue, probably. Your heart hammers, but your hands stay steady. You've practiced this, controlling your body's betrayal. No flushing, no quickened breath, no pupils dilating. Just Marie Dubois, seamstress, reading about synthetic fabric production. 2 German officers enter, and the atmosphere shifts like all the oxygen left the room. Everyone performs their role, the locals shrinking slightly, avoiding eye contact, continuing conversations that nobody's really having. The officers scan the room with the lazy confidence of predators who know the prey can't run. Their gaze slides over you, harmless Frenchwoman, appropriately cowed, unremarkable. Then your contact walks in, and your blood turns to ice water. It's wrong, all wrong. He's supposed to be 40, slight build, nervous tick in his left eye. This man is 35 at most, moves like a boxer, and his eyes are steady as stones. He heads straight for your table, too direct. No surveillance detection route. Might as well wear a sign saying, "I'm a German agent." "The weather is better in Normandy," he says. Perfect password, perfect accent, perfectly wrong. You have 2 seconds to decide. Run and blow your cover. Stay and maybe die. Your training kicks in. When in doubt, play stupid. "I'm sorry?" You blink at him. Confused seamstress wondering why this stranger is discussing meteorology. "I think you're mistaken, monsieur." His face flickers, frustration, surprise, before recovering. "My apologies. You reminded me of someone." But he doesn't leave, hovering like a wasp over jam. The German officers are watching now, interested in this little drama. "Perhaps you'd like to sit," you offer, because sometimes the best defense is aggressive hospitality. You look tired. Make him refuse. Make him look rude. Make him make the next move in this deadly chess game. He sits. Of course he sits. Orders coffee. Now you're trapped in a conversation with someone who might be Gestapo, might be a turned agent, might be your contact having a very bad day. The SOE never covered this in training. What to do when you can't tell if someone's trying to save you or kill you. "I'm Marie Dubois," you offer, sticking to your cover like a life raft. "I'm new to Lyon." "Claude Mercier," he replies, which might be true or might be what he thinks you want to hear. "What brings you to our troubled city?" You launch into Marie's story, the bombing in Marseille, seeking work, cousin in Lyon who turned out to have fled to Switzerland, boring details that feel real because you've lived them so thoroughly. He listens with an intensity that could be suspicion or sympathy. The test comes when he mentions specific streets in Marseille, places Marie would know. You navigate them perfectly because you spent hours with maps, memorizing a city you've never seen. But when he mentions a wonderful cafe on Rue Paradis, you smell the trap. There's no cafe there, just German administrative buildings. I wouldn't know, you say carefully. That area was destroyed in the bombing. Something shifts in his eyes. Recognition? Respect? He finishes his coffee, leaves money on the table. Be careful, Mademoiselle Dubois. Lyon can be unpredictable. He's gone before you can respond, leaving you with cold coffee and the certainty that you've just survived something, though you're not sure what. Historians still debate how many SOE operations failed because of these moments of uncertainty. In the intelligence game, paranoia keeps you alive, but too much paranoia paralyzes you. Every contact could be compromised. Every cafe could be a trap. Every friendly face could hide an interrogator. The successful agents learn to navigate this perpetual uncertainty, trusting their instincts while maintaining their cover. You wait exactly 17 minutes, long enough to finish your coffee naturally, then leave. The German officers don't follow. The waiter barely glances up. Outside, Lyon continues its occupied existence, and you disappear into it, another grey figure in a grey city, alive for another day in a world where the wrong coffee order could kill you. The safe house smells like cabbage and fear. You've been here 3 days, waiting for new papers after your last set failed German inspection. The forger had used the wrong shade of blue ink, a mistake that almost cost you everything. Madame Leclerc, your host, claims to be sympathetic to the resistance, but she counts the silverware every morning and charges you black market prices for mouldy bread. Safe houses are never safe. They're just places where you might die in your sleep instead of on the street. This one is a third-floor apartment overlooking a tannery, the stench so powerful it makes your eyes water. Perfect cover. Madame Leclerc explains, the Germans avoid this street unless absolutely necessary. The smell reminds them they're not in Berlin anymore. You share the apartment with 2 other guests, a downed Canadian airman with a broken collarbone and a Jewish teenager passing as Catholic until the escape network can move him south. The Canadian doesn't speak French and keeps trying to practice English with you. Each word is a potential death sentence. You pretend not to understand, playing Marie the seamstress who knows only French and a few words of German picked up from the occupation. The real danger isn't the guests. It's Madame Leclerc's nephew, who visits every Tuesday. He wears the blue uniform of the milice, Vichy's French Gestapo, more vicious than the Germans because they have something to prove. He sits in the kitchen, complaining about communist terrorists while his aunt serves him real coffee she claims not to have. You stay in your room, listening to his boots on the stairs, wondering if today he'll decide to search the apartment. On your 4th night, everything goes wrong. You wake to smashing wood and German voices. Raus! Raus! The Canadian jumps from his bed, forgetting his collarbone, screaming in English. You grab your false papers and the suicide pill hidden in your lipstick case. The L pill, they called it in training, like it was vitamins instead of instant death. The Jewish boy is already at the window, calculating the drop. 3 floors onto cobblestones. Better than Drancy Transit Camp, but not by much. You're all in night clothes, no shoes, no coats. November wind cutting through thin fabric. The Germans are on the 2nd floor now, Madame Leclerc is screaming about her rights, her nephew's connections. A pistol shot ends her protests. The training kicks in. You shove the Canadian toward a closet. With his injury, he can't run. Throw coats over him. Pray the Germans are lazy. The boy is climbing out the window. You follow. Bare feet on frozen metal gutters. Nightgown catching on rough stones. Your L-pill is between your teeth, ready to bite if you fall. The drainpipe is slick with ice. You're halfway down when the Jewish boy loses his grip. He falls silently, brave to the end, hitting the stones with a sound like dropped meat. Still alive, leg bent wrong, trying to crawl. German boots appear at the window above. They're laughing, taking bets on whether you'll fall too. You drop the last meter, ankles screaming on impact. The boy grabs your hand. Run, he whispers. I'm finished anyway. But you're dragging him into the tannery shadows, his blood leaving a trail the Germans could follow blindfolded. Behind you, submachine guns chatter. Bullets spark off cobblestones where you were seconds ago. The tannery vats provide cover, pools of chemicals that burn your nose and throat. You lower the boy behind one, his face grey with shock. Listen, you tell him in rapid French. When they come, I'll run left. You stay hidden. They'll chase me. He's maybe 16. Someone's son, someone's everything. Promise me, he says. If they catch you, take the pill. Don't let them make you talk. Historians still argue about the ethics of safe houses. How many innocent families died because they sheltered agents? How many agents survived because civilians risked everything? The mathematics of resistance are written in blood. Save one agent, potentially lose an entire family. Hide one Jewish teenager, risk the whole network. You hear the Germans entering the tannery, flashlights cutting through darkness. The boy pushes you away. Go! You run, crashing through hanging hides, making noise to draw them. Behind you, guns fire. You don't look back. 3 blocks later, you collapse in a church doorway. L-pill still clutched between teeth. Nightgown soaked with tannery chemicals and the boy's blood. A priest finds you at dawn, takes you for a prostitute or madwoman. You babble Marie Dubois' cover story through chattering teeth until he realizes you need help that only the resistance can provide. Later, you learn the Canadian survived. The Germans missed the closet, too eager to chase running prey. The Jewish boy died in the tannery, but not before killing one German with a knife he'd hidden. Madame Leclerc was shot for harboring terrorists. Her nephew was promoted. The priest arranges new shelter, a convent where nuns hide people in their vegetable cellar. It smells like turnips and salvation. You radio London from their chicken coop, reporting another safe house blown, another helper dead, another narrow escape that feels more like failure. The response is clinical. Find new accommodation, continue mission. As if safe houses grow on trees in occupied France. As if people willing to die for strangers are common as bread. You think of Madame Leclerc counting spoons, charging too much for food, dying for guests she barely tolerated. Heroes don't always look heroic. Sometimes they look like greedy landladies who open their doors anyway. The classroom at Beaulieu smelled like furniture polish and fear sweat. Major Buckmaster stood at the front, calmly explaining how the Gestapo would pull out your fingernails. They start with the little finger, he said, demonstrating on a mannequin hand. Most people break by the 3rd nail. The key is to scream early. It satisfies them, makes them think they're winning. You sat between Violette Sabo and Yvonne Roudelat. Taking notes like this was a normal university lecture. Psychological preparation for interrogation, the schedule called it. What it really was, learning to survive torture long enough for your network to scatter. The magic number was 48 hours. Hold out that long, and your information became worthless. The resistance would change safe houses, codes, everything you knew. They brought in survivors to teach you. Men with missing fingers, women with scars that disappeared under their collars. A Polish officer explained how the Gestapo used family members. They made me watch while they questioned my sister. She lasted 6 hours. I broke in 20 minutes. He lit a cigarette with hands that shook perpetually. The physical pain you can prepare for. The psychological torture, that's what breaks you. The practical exercises were worse than the lectures. They'd drag you from bed at 3 a.m., hood over your head, driven to anonymous buildings, cold water, stress positions, endless questions in German accented English. You learn that everyone breaks eventually. The only question is when. One trainee, a banker before the war, sobbed through his entire interrogation, but never gave up his cover story. Another, a rugby player built like a brick wall, cracked in 3 hours. You discovered your breaking point involved sleep deprivation and white noise. After 52 hours without sleep, with sirens blaring, you started hallucinating. Your dead grandmother appeared in the corner, speaking German. That's when you almost gave up your real name. The instructor, a kind-faced woman who looked like someone's favorite aunt, noted it in your file. Avoid capture, she recommended. Helpful. Now, sitting in this lion safe house, you practice what they taught you. Mental exercises to withstand pain. Meditation techniques stolen from Indian mystics. How to dislocate your thumb to slip handcuffs. Though they warn this only works if your hands are small and your pain tolerance is astronomical. Yours are, and it is. The cyanide pill lives in your lipstick now, after you almost swallowed it during the tannery raid. L pills, they call them. L for lethal. Though everyone knows it really stands for last resort. 12 seconds from bite to death, they promised. In reality, it's closer to 30 seconds of agony as your nervous system shuts down. Still better than what happens in the cellars of Avenue Foch. You know, agents who've been taken. Andre Borel lasted 4 days before they shot her. She gave them nothing, they say, though how anyone knows that is unclear. Maybe it's just what we tell ourselves. Noor Inayat Khan, the wireless operator with the Indian princess background, supposedly scratched messages on her cell wall with her fingernails. The Germans had to chain her hands and feet because she kept trying to escape. The worst stories come from Ravensbrück, the women's concentration camp, where they send captured agents who they don't shoot immediately. Medical experiments, slave labor, systematic degradation designed to break minds before bodies. You've heard whispers about Block 15, where they keep the night and fog prisoners, those meant to disappear without trace. Your fingernails are bitten down to nothing, a habit that would horrify Marie Dubois, but might save you 30 seconds of agony later. You've practiced the cover story so many times you could recite it under sodium pentothal. Name, birth date, parents' names, first communion dress color, favorite teacher, every detail that builds a life that never existed. But the instructors were honest about one thing. Preparation only goes so far. When they have you, the Polish officer said, when the pain is real and not training, everything changes. You'll say things you never meant to say. You'll betray people you love. The only question is how long you hold out. Historians still debate the effectiveness of SOE interrogation training. Critics argue it was psychological torture that traumatized agents, before they even reached France. Defenders point out that trained agents lasted significantly longer under interrogation than untrained resistance members. What's certain is that of the female SOE agents captured, none betrayed their networks immediately. Some held out for days. A few died without talking at all. You practice your breathing exercises, the ones they taught you for managing pain. In through the nose, hold for 4, out through the mouth. The L pill tastes like bitter almonds through the lipstick wax. You've programmed yourself to bite down if you hear German voices and can't run. Better 30 seconds of agony than days of it. Tomorrow you'll transmit again. Knowing the detection vans are getting closer, you'll meet contacts who might be compromised. Carry messages that could destroy entire networks. Live another day as Marie Dubois in a world where the wrong word means interrogation cells and fingernails and decisions about how much pain you can endure. The Polish officer had one last piece of advice. Don't be a hero. Heroes die badly. Be a survivor. Give them something. Old addresses, blown codes, dead contacts. Make them think they're winning while you buy time. He smiled without humor. And if you can't be a survivor, be quick. That's what the pill is for. You close your eyes and see the mannequin hand, fingerless and white, somewhere in Lyon. The Gestapo is questioning someone, somewhere. An agent is counting hours, trying to reach 48, somewhere. A network is scattering because their radio operator missed a transmission. But not your network, not today. You're still free, still breathing, still pretending to be a seamstress who knows nothing about radios or codes or the taste of cyanide through lipstick wax. Tomorrow, who knows? But today, you practice being unbreakable, knowing that everyone breaks, preparing for pain while praying it never comes. The invisible ink smells like vinegar and broken promises. You're hunched over a candle in the convent cellar, heating the back of what looks like an innocent letter from Marie's fictional cousin in Vichy. The real message appears slowly, brown words emerging from white paper like ghosts. Network compromised. Heinrich talking. Abort Tuesday drop. Heinrich. You trained with him in Scotland. Real name Henry. Welsh mining engineer who spoke German like a Berliner. Caught 3 days ago. Now he's talking. Everyone talks eventually, but 3 days is too soon. Either they broke him fast or he turned voluntarily. Either way, everyone he knows is blown. You burn the letter immediately, watching weeks of planning dissolve into ash. The Tuesday drop was supposed to bring fresh radio crystals, ammunition, and 2 new agents from London. Now it's a trap waiting to spring. You'll need to warn the reception committee, but half of them Heinrich knows. The geometry of betrayal gets complicated fast. The SOE's secret message systems are equal parts James Bond and desperate improvisation. Invisible ink made from lemon juice, onion juice, or bodily fluids. Yes, really. Urine works brilliantly, though the smell raises questions. Messages hidden in the binding of books, sealed inside cigarette papers. Microdots the size of periods containing entire documents. You once carried nuclear physicist reports out of Paris hidden in your menstrual pads, betting correctly that German soldiers wouldn't search there. Your personal favorite is the innocent letter system. You write chatty messages to fictional relatives, each word carefully chosen. Uncle's rheumatism is better means the landing field is clear. Cousin Marie had her baby. Signals a supply drop is needed. The roses bloomed early. Means run like hell. We're blown. The Germans know about these codes, of course, but finding the pattern in thousands of genuine letters is like finding a specific needle in a warehouse of needles. Then there's the BBC messaging system, the personal messages broadcast each night at 7:30 and 9:15. Thousands of French citizens tune in to hear nonsense phrases between music programs. The carpenter's dog has fleas. Aunt Sophie likes green beans. Most mean nothing. Decoys to hide the real signals. But somewhere in France, a resistance group hears their phrase and knows to blow up a railway junction tonight. You have your own BBC phrase. The seamstress lost her thimble. It means you've been captured, and London should consider everything you know compromised. You've practiced saying it under duress, hoping the Gestapo won't recognize it as code. Though if you're in a position to broadcast BBC messages while captured, things have gone sideways in ways the SOE never anticipated. The technology keeps evolving. The Germans develop better detection equipment, so the SOE creates burst transmitters that compress messages into seconds-long squeals. The Gestapo learns to spot microdots, so agents hide them in more creative places. One courier transported messages inside hollow teeth, until a German dentist got suspicious about why a young woman had so many crowns. Your current system involves a Paris fashion magazine that arrives monthly at the convent. Specific letters on specific pages spell out messages from London. The Mother Superior thinks you're vain, reading about hemlines while France burns. She doesn't know that the article about winter coats contains your extraction orders, or that the perfume advertisement holds radio frequencies. The chemistry set hidden behind the preserves would make your old science teacher proud. Silver nitrate for invisible ink. Potassium permanganate for destroying documents, burns hot enough to melt metal. Chemicals that react to heat, light, or specific developing agents. You've ruined more clothes with accidental spills than enemy action. Marie the seamstress would be appalled. But it's the human elements that usually fail. Heinrich knew too much. Names, addresses, recognition signals. Now you're encoding warnings in lemon juice, hoping they reach people before the Gestapo does. Your hands shake as you write, not from fear, but from fury. 3 days. He lasted 3 days before selling out people who trusted him. Historians still argue about the effectiveness of SOE security measures. The invisible ink and microdots seem quaint now, but they saved lives. The BBC messages, mocked by the Germans as amateur dramatics, coordinated hundreds of successful operations. What failed was always the human element, the agent who talked too soon, the courier who kept written addresses instead of memorizing them, the network that trusted the wrong person. You finish encoding messages for the survivors of Heinrich's network, each one hidden differently, inside a chess piece, baked into bread, sewn into coat lining. Redundancy is survival. If one courier is caught, others might get through. You learned this from André Borel before her capture. Never send one message when you can send 3. Never use one method when you can use 5. Paranoia is just another word for experience. Tomorrow you'll start rebuilding. New codes, new drops. New contacts to replace the ones Heinrich burned. The work continues because it must. Because somewhere in London, clerks are encoding BBC messages about dogs with fleas and aunts who like vegetables. Because in Berlin, men in grey uniforms are planning operations that must be stopped. Because the invisible war, fought with lemon juice and microdots and codes that smell like vinegar, matters as much as the visible one fought with bullets and bombs. You blow out the candle, darkness swallowing the cellar. Somewhere, Heinrich is talking. Somewhere, the Gestapo is moving. But tonight, in this convent that smells like cabbage and sanctity, you're encoding warnings that might save lives. The seamstress hasn't lost her thimble yet. The knock comes at 4:47 a.m. 3 short, 2 long, 1 short. Not the signal. Your contact would tap twice, pause, then 3 times fast. This rhythm is wrong, amateur, like someone who learned it secondhand. Through the thin wall, you hear your neighbor's door splinter, boots on stairs, German voices mixing with French. Where is the woman, the seamstress? You're already dressed. Sleeping clothes saves precious seconds. The window is painted shut. Would make too much noise anyway. The L pill is between your teeth as you slip into the hallway. Not the main stairs where the Germans are climbing, but the service stairs that smell like rotting vegetables. The concierge is supposed to be sympathetic, but sympathies change when Lugers point at heads. Down 3 flights in stockinged feet, shoes in hand, coat grabbed from the hook by the door, into the street where dawn hasn't yet touched the sky. Behind you, someone screams, "Hi, terrible," cut short. Your radio man Bernard, who was supposed to leave yesterday but stayed because his girlfriend was sick. Now he's learning what Heinrich already knows, that love is leverage, and the Gestapo uses every lever. You force yourself to walk, not run. Running women draw attention. Marie Dubois, heading to early shift at a textile factory that doesn't exist. Round the corner, another, putting distance between you and whatever's happening in that apartment. Your emergency protocols kick in. 3 blocks north, 2 east. Check for surveillance. Double back, check again. The safe house is blown. Your radio is there, hidden under floorboards that won't stay hidden long. 2 months of intelligence reports encoded in fashion magazines. Contact lists disguised as recipe cards. Everything you need to function as an agent, about to become evidence in a Gestapo file. The backup plan involves a church where the priest asks no questions and the confessional has a false back. You slip inside as the first workers appear on streets, your prayers mixing with contingency planning. Bernard knows this location. Under torture, he'll reveal it, but maybe he'll hold out long enough for you to warning the priest. Gather the emergency supplies hidden in the altar. Disappear again, through the confessional screen. The priest's profile looks tired. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been 2 weeks since my last confession, and the roses bloomed early. His sharp intake of breath confirms he understands. Network compromised. Get out, now. Your sins are grave, my child. Perhaps you should reflect on them elsewhere. The convent of St. Augustine offers excellent spiritual guidance. New safe house, 30 kilometers south. You'll need to walk. Trains require identity checks. And your papers are in the apartment being torn apart by German efficiency. The betrayal burns worse than the fear. Someone talked, not Heinrich. He didn't know this address. Someone closer. Someone trusted. The girlfriend Bernard couldn't leave. The concierge who smiled every morning. The black marketeer who sold you eggs last week. In this business, paranoia is survival. But you can't function believing everyone's a traitor. Until they are, you leave through the vestry, blessing yourself with holy water that feels like a lie. Outside, Lion continues its morning routine. Bread lines forming, shop shutters rising, German patrols changing shift. Normal life happening around your disaster. The art of resistance is pretending catastrophe isn't following 3 steps behind. The journey south takes 2 days of dodging checkpoints, sleeping in barns and eating stolen apples. Your feet bleed through worn shoes, but bloody feet beat Gestapo cellars. Every person you pass might recognize you, might have seen the notices that are surely posted by now. Marie Dubois, seamstress, wanted for terrorism. The sketch won't be accurate, They never are. But fear makes everyone's memory sharper. Historians still debate the SOE's survival statistics. Of 39 women sent to France, 13 died. But that doesn't count the near misses, the midnight escapes, the times death knocked but found nobody home. Every agent has stories of almost caught, almost shot, almost betrayed. The successful ones learn to live in that space between almost and actually, dancing on the edge of disaster. The convent appears through morning mist like a medieval fantasy. The nuns take you in without questions, assign you to kitchen duty, hand you a novice's habit that hides everything Marie Dubois was. In their vegetable garden, you bury your L-pill under the turnips, not abandoning it, just planting it where you can find it later. Like everything in this life, temporary safety in a permanent war. That night, you learn Bernard held out for 6 hours before his heart gave out. The girlfriend was Gestapo, recruited months ago, playing a long game. 3 more agents caught in the sweep. The network you spend months building, destroyed in one morning by a knock with the wrong rhythm. But you're alive, peeling potatoes in a convent kitchen, wearing a cross instead of cyanide, planning your next move. Tomorrow you'll make contact with another circuit, rebuild from ashes, again, because that's what survivors do. They survive, they adapt, they continue. The betrayal cuts deep, but not as deep as German bullets. The Mother Superior watches you work, sees something in your eyes that prayer won't fix. You're safe here, she says quietly, for now. Even nuns understand impermanence in occupied France. Today's sanctuary is tomorrow's trap. Today's friend is tomorrow's informant. Today's escape is tomorrow's story of almost, but not quite, disaster. Fresnes prison smells like despair and disinfectant. You know because you spent 3 weeks there before the escape that shouldn't have been possible. The official SOE report will list it as miraculous, but miracles had nothing to do with it. Just a guard who hated Germans more than he loved his salary. A set of stolen keys, and timing so precise it makes your radio transmissions look sloppy. You're thinking about Fresnes because you're standing outside its walls again, not as a prisoner, but as part of the most insane rescue attempt in SOE history. Inside, Denise Bloch, radio operator, mother of 2, nerves of piano wire, awaits transport to Ravensbrück. Intel says she leaves tomorrow. Tonight, she leaves with you, or she doesn't leave at all. The plan is beautiful in its stupidity. During the changing of guards at 2 a.m., there's a 4-minute window where the south gate is managed by 1 sleepy Frenchman instead of 2 alert Germans. Your inside man, that same guard who helped you escape, will suffer a heart attack in the confusion. 3 women dressed as nursing sisters will rush in to help, except you're not nurses. And under your habits are Sten guns and enough plastic explosive to turn the gate into memory. This is madness, mutters Jacqueline, your demolitions expert. She's right, but Denise knows too much. Safe houses, codes, the location of the new wireless sets from London. The Gestapo has had her for 6 days. Tomorrow she ships east, and ships east means medical experiments and mass graves. The algebra of rescue is simple. Her life against yours, her secrets against the network's survival. The prison looms like a medieval nightmare updated with searchlights and machine guns. You memorize the layout during your involuntary stay. Cell block D, 3rd floor, 4th window from the left. That's where they keep the women condemned to Nacht und Nebel, night and fog. Hitler's poetic term for disappearing people. The poetry doesn't mention the screaming from the basement interrogation rooms. During your 3 weeks inside, you learned the rhythm of the place. Morning roll call at 5 a.m., thin soup at noon. More roll call, lights out at 8 p.m. In between. The soundtrack of occupation. Cell doors slamming, guards shouting in German, and sometimes, not often enough, the rattle of keys that meant release or transfer. Usually transfer, usually east. You shared a cell with a communist teacher who'd printed underground newspapers. She taught you prison economics, how many cigarettes for extra bread, which guards could be bribed, why you never eat the meat in the soup, prisoners who ask too many questions become ingredients. She's still in there, probably dead by now. The communists don't have escape plans involving fake nuns and stolen keys. The escape route is burned in your memory, down the corridor where the lights flicker because the wiring is older than the Republic, past the interrogation rooms. Don't think about the sounds. Don't think about the smells. Through the laundry where trusty prisoners, the ones who've given up hope or information or both, wash blood from uniforms. Out the south gate. If the guard plays his part, if the timing works, if nobody shoots you for wearing the wrong kind of wimple. Escaping from friends isn't the hard part. The hard part is what comes after. Every train station has your photograph. Every checkpoint knows Marie Dubois is blown. You'll need new papers, new identity, new everything. The SOE has procedures for this. Emergency caches with documents and money. But procedures assume you're not rescuing condemned prisoners in the middle of the night. 2 a.m. approaches like a slow-motion car crash. Your habit itches, horsehair cloth, because comfort is sin, apparently. The Sten gun hidden beneath it digs into your ribs. Jacqueline checks her explosive charges one more time. The third nun, Michelle, hasn't said a word in an hour. When she finally speaks, it's to ask, what if she's already dead? You don't answer because the answer is obvious. If Denise is dead, you're risking everything for a corpse. But intelligence work isn't about certainties. It's about calculating risks and accepting that sometimes you gamble wrong. The difference between heroes and corpses is often just timing and luck. The guard's heart attack is Oscar-worthy. He clutches his chest, staggers, collapses with a groan that brings 2 Germans running. You and your sisters of mercy rush forward, habits fluttering, medical bags full of ammunition swinging. Let us through, we can help. The Germans, confused by French nuns at 2 a.m., hesitate just long enough. Inside, controlled chaos. Jacqueline plants charges while you and Michelle race for cell block D. The trustee prisoner on night duty looks at you, looks at the Sten gun you're no longer hiding, and turns around like she's seen nothing. Smart woman. Survival instinct intact. Denise is alive, barely. 6 days of Gestapo hospitality have left her looking like a medical textbook on trauma. But she's standing, even manages a cracked smile. About time, she whispers. The food here is terrible. The explosion, when it comes, is beautiful. Controlled demolition that takes out the gate, but not the wall. Jacqueline knows her craft. In the confusion, sirens, searchlights, Germans shouting, 4 nuns vanish into the night. By dawn, you're 20 kilometers away. Denise unconscious but breathing in a farmer's hidden cellar. Historians still call it the miracle of friends. But you know better. It was planning, luck, and a guard who decided his pension wasn't worth watching women disappear eastward. It was 3 agents willing to die for one, because that's what you do. You don't leave people behind, not if there's any chance, however insane, of getting them out. The liberation of Lyon sounds like heaven and tastes like ashes. American tanks roll down streets where you once ran from Gestapo raids. GIs throwing chocolate to children who've forgotten what chocolate tastes like. You stand in the crowd, still dressed as Marie Dubois because you've forgotten how to be anyone else, watching your war end with brass bands and kissing strangers. But liberation brings its own betrayals. The same crowds cheering Americans were cheering Germans 4 years ago. The baker who sold you bread with hidden messages now claims he was resistance all along, though you know he reported 2 Jewish families. Everyone's a hero now that the heroes won't shoot back. You're searching for survivors, but the mathematics of resistance are brutal. Of your original network, 12 are confirmed dead, 8 missing, which means dead without bodies. 3 in hospitals that used to be Gestapo headquarters. The communist teacher from Fresnes, executed 2 weeks before liberation. Bernard's girlfriend, the Gestapo agent, disappeared in civilian clothes, probably halfway to Argentina. The victory parade includes women with shaved heads, collaborators who slept with Germans, march through streets while crowds spit and jeer. You recognize one. Marie-Claire from the cafe, who passed messages for you while serving Germans coffee. Her collaboration was cover, but try explaining that to a mob. You pull your hat low and keep walking. Some secrets are better buried with the dead. At SOE headquarters, a hotel requisitioned from a collaborator who's now pretending he was in Switzerland. British officers debrief you with tea and bureaucracy. They want reports, timelines, confirmation of who died when, as if you kept careful notes while running from safe house to safe house. Approximately, when did Agent Willow cease transmission? November, you think, though it might have been October. Time blurs when you're measuring it in survival. They're particularly interested in the women who didn't make it. Violette Sabo, captured, tortured, executed at Ravensbrück. Noor Inayat Khan, betrayed, escaped, recaptured, shot at Dachau. They want to know if you have any information regarding their final dispositions. You want to scream that their final disposition was murdered by Nazis while doing jobs that officially didn't exist. The male agents get immediate recognition, medals, promotions to ranks they never held in occupied France. The women get tea and questions about whether they maintained appropriate conduct during captivity. One officer actually asks if you formed any inappropriate attachments during your service. You think of Bernard dying under torture, of Denise's broken fingers, of the Jewish boy in the tannery. No, you say. No inappropriate attachments. France wants to forget you existed. De Gaulle's narrative doesn't include British women running networks. The official story stars French men defeating Germans through French courage. The communist resistance, who did most of the dying, gets written out. The women who carried messages, operated radios, and led escape routes. Footnotes, if that. You attend memorials for people whose real names you never knew. Someone reads lists of code names: Prosper, Scientist, Wrestler, while families wonder which one was their son, their daughter, their spouse. The SOE offers to tell families their loved ones died serving their country, but can't explain how or where. Secrecy survives even death. The bitter pill is watching collaborators reinvent themselves. The police chief, who signed deportation orders, now runs a restaurant. The factory owner who used slave labor got a contract with the Americans. Money has no memory, and France needs to rebuild more than it needs justice. You bite your tongue when former black marketeers talk about their suffering during occupation. Denise finds you in her cafe near the old safe house, now a dress shop again. She's heading back to England. Can't stand the victory parades and lying heroes. They're giving medals to men who hid in cellars, she says, while refusing to acknowledge women who ran entire networks. Her fingers healed wrong. She'll never operate a radio again. The SOE offers her a desk job, typing reports about operations they won't admit happened. You're supposed to report to London for reintegration, classes on how to be a normal woman again, how to stop checking for exits, stop encoding messages in your head, stop flinching when someone knocks wrong. They have psychiatrists who've never heard a Sten gunfire, ready to fix what 4 years of being someone else broke. But first, one last mission. You visit the convent where nuns hid your radio in their chicken coop. The Mother Superior died 2 days before liberation. Heart attack, they say. Though the bruises suggest otherwise. You leave flowers and a donation from funds that don't officially exist. The surviving sisters promise to pray for you. You don't tell them Marie Dubois is already dead. Historians call it the bitter liberation, when surviving meant confronting who survived and why. The wrong people lived. The right people died. Heroes turned out to be cowards. Cowards turned out to be heroes. And most people were just trying to survive. Your war doesn't end with parades and chocolate. It ends with lists of the missing and the lie that victory makes it worthwhile. The train ticket to London sits in your pocket. In 3 days, you'll board it. Shed Marie Dubois, like a snake shed skin. Become whoever the SOE decides you should be next. But tonight, you sit in a liberated cafe, drinking real coffee for the first time in 4 years, counting ghosts and wondering if survival is its own kind of failure, when so many didn't. The typing pool at Whitehall sounds like machine guns, which is why you can't work there. The SOE found that out after you broke a typewriter attacking it during a flashback to Lyon. Now you file papers in a basement office where the only sound is the radiator's death rattle and your supervisor's emphatic breathing. He's never been farther from London than Brighton, but he corrects your reports about occupied France with red pen and authority. Surely you mean eliminated, he says, marking through where you wrote murdered. The official history doesn't include murder. Enemy agents are eliminated. Allied agents die in service. No one is murdered, tortured, or betrayed. Language launders truth into something acceptable for parliamentary records. Your demobilisation pay is £17 and what they generously call a resettlement grant. Enough for 2 months' rent if you don't eat. Male agents got military pensions, ranks, preference for civil service jobs. You got a letter thanking you for auxiliary service and suggesting you might enjoy working as a secretary. After all, you already know how to type. Never mind that your typing usually involved encoding messages about Nazi troop movements. The other women drift back to invisibility. Odette Sansom marries her commanding officer and becomes the acceptable face of female resistance, tortured but dignified, heroic but feminine, the ones who killed with their bare hands, who led armies of Maquis fighters, who survived by becoming harder than their enemies. They're encouraged to forget it happened. Resume your life, they say, as if you can resume something that no longer exists. You try. God, how you try. You get a flat in Paddington. Take a job at an import firm whose owner doesn't ask about the gaps in your employment history. You wear dresses instead of stolen German uniforms. You buy groceries without checking for surveillance. You sleep in a bed that doesn't require escape routes. Normal life, or what passes for it. But muscle memory runs deeper than intention. You still test every chair for sight lines. Still encode shopping lists from habit. The woman at the corner shop mentions her husband was in France during the war. And you almost ask which network before remembering normal people don't think in networks. You're fluent in a language no one speaks anymore. The dreams are the worst part. Not nightmares, those you could handle. Dreams where they're all alive. Bernard laughing at your terrible accent. Denise tapping out messages like Chopin playing Morse code. The Jewish boy from the tannery, leg healed, talking about the university he'll attend after the war. You wake up and have to remember they're dead all over again. Some nights, you meet other women in pubs that don't ask questions. Former fannies who decoded your messages. Former nurses who treated agents between missions are. You recognize each other by what's missing. The ability to trust easily, to sleep deeply, to believe the world makes sense. You don't talk about the war, you talk around it, like describing a hole by its edges. The men write memoirs. How I Won the War, by someone who spent 6 months filing papers in Baker Street. They get publishing deals, lecture tours, consultancy fees. When you approach a publisher about writing the truth, women running escape lines, operating radios, leading resistance cells, he suggests you might write romance novels instead. Lady spies, he says, aren't quite believable, are they? France sends you a medal. Eventually, the Croix de Guerre arrives in brown paper. No ceremony, no explanation for your neighbors who think you spent the war in the countryside avoiding bombs. You hide it with your L-pill, expired but kept for reasons you can't articulate, and the compass that looks like a powder compact. Souvenirs from someone else's life. The final insult comes at a Remembrance Day service. They read names of the fallen, but only the official ones. The agents with military ranks, proper documentation, families who pushed for recognition. Not Denise Bloch, whose children think she died in a bombing. Not the communist teacher, whose name you never learned. Not the Jewish boy, who officially never existed at all. You stop attending services, stop trying to explain, stop expecting anyone to understand that you're homesick for a country that tried to kill you, for a person who never existed, for a purpose that evaporated with liberation. Marie Dubois was more real than whoever you're supposed to be now. Historians still argue about why female SOE agents were forgotten so quickly. Some blame institutional sexism, the refusal to acknowledge women in combat roles. Others point to Cold War politics. Many agents worked with communists, making their stories inconvenient. The truth is simpler. Forgetting is easier than remembering. And England wants to forget the war, not celebrate the women who proved they could be just as lethal as men. You learn to live with it. Work your job. Pay your rent. Pretend the skills that kept you alive are just party tricks. Yes, you can pick locks. No, you won't explain how you learned. Yes, your French is excellent. No, you won't discuss where you practiced. You're a filing clerk who used to be someone else, in a basement office where no one asks questions. Late at night, when London sleeps and you can't, you sometimes encode messages to no one. Old habits, muscle memory, or maybe just proof you remember. The seamstress lost her thimble. The roses bloomed early. Network intact, awaiting instructions. Messages for ghosts from a ghost, in a world that's moved on to other wars. But you remember, someone has to remember. Even if remembering feels like drowning in slow motion, even if survival tastes like ash in your mouth, the story of the SOE women fades now, like radio signals weakening across the distance. These remarkable souls who walked through fire and shadow, who carried secrets heavier than their radio sets, who survived when survival itself was a form of resistance. Their war ended not with fanfare, but with filing cabinets and forgotten service records. Close your eyes and let their voices grow quiet. The tap, tap, tap of Morse code becomes the gentle rhythm of rain on windows. The fear that kept them alive transforms into the deep peace of finally being safe. No more checking shadows. No more encoding messages. No more being someone else. Think of them as they were after, not the heroes they never claimed to be, but ordinary women who did extraordinary things when the world needed them. They returned to ordinary lives, keeping their secrets like some people keep photograph albums, tucked away, but never discarded. They raised children who never knew their mothers could kill. They worked in offices where their greatest danger was paper cuts. They grew old in a world that forgot their courage. And perhaps that forgetting was its own kind of peace. Their stories drift now into history, into the quiet spaces between words. You're safe in your bed, in a world they helped save. Though they'd never phrase it that grandly. They'd say they just did what needed doing. But we know better. We know the weight of what they carried, the price of what they paid, the courage it took to be forgotten. Sleep comes gently now, carrying you away from wartime France, from codes and radios and dangerous choices. Your breathing slows to match theirs, finally at rest. The women of the SOE fade into dreams, their secrets safe, their war finally over, and you drift deeper into sleep, carried by their courage into peaceful darkness. Sweet dreams, and thank you for remembering those who were so deliberately forgotten.